Well, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to ASP's latest webinar. Today we're covering subjects I'm quite enthusiastic about, user experience and conversion rate optimization, and particular fundamentals for events websites. One of the things which I love about this topic is that some of the changes that you can make here are some of the quickest wins you can make in terms of improving performance. So let's say, for example, you have a really poor call to action on the website. Literally by just updating that, almost straight away you can see quite major improvements to performance of the website. So I'm excited to be covering this today. You'll be pleased to hear that it's not death by PowerPoint. In actual fact, it's very much we're going to be using an actual site for me to do a physical walkthrough on that site and pull things out. Now, what would be really fantastic would be if we could have some feedback, some audience participation, if that's possible. If not, that's no problem. But the idea being, as I go through particular web pages, it would be great if anyone does have any comments or questions as we go along, because this is very much going to be a practical session. We will be covering a few UX and CRO basics, CRO being conversion rate optimization, for anyone who doesn't know. We'll be looking at that customer journey from someone who maybe have received an email, done a Google search, as that being the first touch point. We'll also be addressing briefly interests in which potential users may have. So, for example, if someone's only interested in a particular section of the event, how can we think about that? And we've got lots of best practice checklists which we can run through, and we'll be going through that on the actual web pages themselves. And we'll be using CES Tech as an example. They're not an ASP client. And also, more importantly, I haven't actually spent loads of time analysing this website. Obviously, I've had a quick look at it beforehand, because what I wanted to do was to kind of discuss thoughts, etc., as I went through the website, to hopefully kind of put over the sort of thought processes behind each element of the page and what's important and what you need to look out for. So UX, CRO, UX short for user experience. So that's very much how visitors interact with your website. Do they find it intuitive? Is it easy to use? Is it logical? Do they find the information in which they're looking for? And conversion rate optimization is very much the process in which you go through to help improve the number of key conversions that you want on your website, whether that be ticket sales, newsletter subscriptions, whether you want exhibitors to sign up, etc., etc. But it's very much a methodical process, which can, some people do it as a one-off thing. You can, ideally, you take learnings year after year, you find out what's worked this year, for example, and then bring that over to next year. And one thing which will be interesting when we look at the CES website is I'll also show you how it looked last year compared with this year. And you can see that they haven't necessarily taken learnings across, and they've just ripped everything up and started again with a shiny new website, which we do see with many clients. And sometimes it means that great work that was done last year on improving things has been lost in the desire to have a nice shiny new website for this year. So UX conversion rate optimization is very much the process of looking at your site and seeing how we can improve that experience and fundamentally get more ticket sales and more subscriptions, etc. Firstly, why do you want to improve this stuff? I mean, it might seem fairly obvious, but initially it's to get people to have more engagement on the site. So when you send people to your website, having that information on there that people are looking for, where is it, what time, where can I get tickets, what are you covering, what speakers do you have, what exhibitors do you have, really provide that information in a nice, clear and easy to read format in which people want to read it, they want to find out more. Typically, the more people look, the more likely they are to buy. And once they've stayed on the site, we want to get more conversions, more people actually registering, buying tickets, making inquiries to exhibit, signing up to your newsletter, all these sorts of things. Now, it really works. If you methodically look through and go through best practices on your website, you can get quite large improvements in performance on a website particular case study presented here where ticket sales from last year versus this year on a particular site increased by 43%. And that's fairly, I wouldn't say that's typical, but for a site that hasn't been optimized before, that's not an unrealistic increase that you could enjoy. And we certainly see, even from improving call to action buttons, by improving the journey through from the main site through to the registration form, just sometimes what seem obvious or fairly minor tweaks can actually make a big difference. Also, for those of you who want to improve the organic performance of your website, get more clicks from Google, strangely actually increasing the user experience and the conversion rates, optimization side of the website can also help improve your Google rankings. Not many people know this, and it's basically because what Google are looking for are websites in which people find useful and they provide an answer to their question. So if you do that, and Google can see that through its Chrome browser as well as Google Analytics, if it can see that people are spending a good amount of time on your website and they're actually converting and buying tickets and et cetera, this can actually improve the organic performance of your website, even if you haven't necessarily done an SEO campaign. So conversion rate optimization, improving user experience really can have a multitude of benefits, which also include improving organic search. So whilst we're on the topic of organic search, what I thought I'd address first of all would actually be when people think of user experience, customer journey, conversion rate optimization, is you firstly need to think where has someone come from. So appreciate there's many routes. It could be an email campaign, could be social, could be pay-per-click. And in this example, I'm just going to think about a Google search. And obviously what we want to make sure is that from where people are coming from, where they're going to, that there's logical steps. And you almost need to look at it as if you were doing, you received the email yourself, you've done the search yourself, and think of it in almost kind of a common sense point of view. So first of all, let's have a look at a Google search. Let's look at Tech Show US and see how things look. Okay, so as you can see here, from some putting into Google Tech Show US, we have a Google ad at the top, just to clarify that this is an actual Google ad. So the organic results, which is a bit below, which is what we have here. And so we can see, so if I'm looking for a tech show, well, first of all, in our meta title at the top, we can see we have tech event. So that's good experience. We actually know what it is, which is a great thing. Maybe at this stage, we don't know who CES are. Be surprised if you wouldn't, but if you don't, we know that it's a tech event. So that's good. I might want to get a bit more information. The most powerful tech event in the world. Now, I don't know what testing they have done about their words that they use, but powerful tech event is putting it out there, isn't it? It's saying that we are a good tech event. So I guess that raises some interest. Now, what I would say is that it's not particularly saying anything about registering, buying tickets, etc. So this bit of text here is called the meta description, and it's a great place, and you can actually put this in the back end of your website if you have an ASP website. It's called the meta description. It's within page options, SEO, and then meta description. And a great place to put your first call to action is actually in here. So, for example, register now, buy tickets. That would be a great thing to add at the end of this meta description. So it's not too bad here, but we've done our search for a tech show in the US. I can see this is a tech event. It's given me a bit of info, not an awful lot, but it said it's a powerful tech event. So let's have a click through and see where we go. Now, immediately, when you think of a sort of customer journey, I'm looking for a tech show or a tech event. And all I see here is that there's nothing actually which kind of reinforces what I've just searched for. So I've just searched for a tech event. And where does it actually say? So I'm having to look for Consumer Technology Association. Is this a tech event? I've got a date and a location. This is where brands get business done. It doesn't actually say tech event here, does it? It's not really saying what you're looking for. Come down here. To be frank, whilst it's a nice eye-catching image, not really know what it's telling me here. Connect, solve, discover, dive in. Pretty generic, if I'm honest. I'm not really, really don't know what it's saying. So we are coming on. I'm slightly jumping ahead here. I will come on to analysis of this homepage, but it's kind of taken me a few a bit of navigating down to actually find out that this is a tech event. And it's your place to experience the innovations transforming how we live. So again, it's a little bit generic, some of the wording, but it's taken me a bit of a scroll down to actually find out that this is a tech event. So I raised this because you very much have to think, first of all, as to how someone is getting to your website and where they have come from. So for example, if it's an email, and in your email you're talking about maybe the audio section of CES Tech, because they have a big audio section with hi-fis and all that sort of thing. Where would you send people to? Would it be to this homepage? Or if I was looking for an audio event and I came here, I think I'd immediately be quite confused as to, do they even do audio? Is this a tech event? Bear in mind what we've looked at here. So if you had an email about that, if you had pay-per-click ad, for example, was very specifically from what your advert is advertising, the text that you have on your ad, what pages are you sending people through to? When you do social, what pages are you sending people through to? And is there a consistent message? If you consider the page is basically like a larger version of the original ads that you first posted, or wherever that ad is, whether it's on social, whether it's a Google ad, or if it's an email that you've sent out, you have to think of the page that you're sending people through to as an extension of your advert. And if it isn't, this hugely affects user experience and conversion rate, because there's a jar. If you're looking for an audio section of a tech event and you come through to here, immediately I'm confused. Where do I go? Are you even a tech event? How can I find out what audio stuff do you have, your exhibitors, your speakers, etc., etc. So you really have to think, where you're coming from and where you're going to. ASP, we're a website provider, so for the remainder of this session, I'm going to concentrate on the actual website itself. But unless I address where you've come from beforehand, that's so important, because if you get that wrong, it honestly doesn't matter how good the website is. If you're, let's say you have an advert about an audio tech event, and I come through to something about orange trainers, obviously, you're going to just hit the back button and exit out. And it doesn't matter how good the website is about orange trainers, you're not going to get any conversions whatsoever. Go back to. So yes, first touch point through to the website, extremely important. And if you use agencies to do your pay-per-click ads, your social ads, etc., we do find sometimes that agencies seem to kind of push over the landing page side to marketing teams or to other people. For me, I think that is not a professional way of looking at it. I think very much make sure you challenge your agency in terms of how they're looking at the landing page and making sure the landing page and your main advert or email, etc., whatever it is, they tie together nicely. I kind of addressed this slightly in the previous slide, but I think before you really want to start improving conversions on a website, you really need to take a step back and have a think as to the interests, etc., and your target audience, which will obviously relate to the different sections you have within your event as well. Because I'd be surprised, especially if I was doing some conversion rate optimization work for CES, I'd be surprised if a big proportion of their audience was just looking for a tech event. I would suspect a lot of the time people have particular interests. Which part of that tech event are they interested in? Is it audio? Is it cybersecurity? Is it, you know, the 1,001 other kind of subsections that you may have at a large tech event like CES? So I think it's really important to start to try and understand what it is that people, what interests do people have, and only then can you then start to align those interests to what people might be looking for. So we've used the example of the audio side. So if you're sending out emails about the latest audio tech that's been, you know, sort of demos that you might be having at the event, speakers, exhibitors, etc., it'd make 100% sense to, from that email, to send people through to the audio tech show, to the audio sort of page that you have on the website. And if you haven't got one, to set one up, because then people will actually, you're giving people what they want. And that would be the same for any other particular topics that you may have too. Just one thing to kind of throw in here is that where sometimes people, and what I see event marketers kind of get tied up sometimes, is how to best deal with what consumers might be looking for. So at CES, they have consumers that go to the event, but also there's a large B2B side to the event as well. And people get confused as to what is right for consumers, what is right for the B2B side, as well as exhibitors as well, because obviously a key part of the website is to drive exhibitor inquiries. But sometimes, especially when it comes to maybe searches that people are doing on Google, there may not be a differentiation. I could be a potential exhibitor typing in audio tech shows to try and find the best ones to go and exhibit at. And so it's difficult to know, or organisers sometimes get confused as to what to put onto these pages. All I'd say is that too many pages can get confusing, and as long as if an exhibitor comes to your audio tech page on the CES website, you just make there's a section that's nice and clear in terms of what they need to do. So how that's best designed obviously will depend upon the particular designer, but so long as there's a clear section for exhibitors, for example, saying, you know, would you like to exhibit here, and a clear call to action, that is normally all that you need to do. But also the page may change over the event cycle, bear that in mind too. So for example, if all of your exhibitor traffic is, you know, a few months out, maybe the page is more exhibitor focused at that point. And then as you get closer, when you have, you know, for the consumers, maybe the page slightly changes and order changes, etc., to then change its focus more to consumers instead. So at this stage, I think it's now starting to think of, okay, so who are the people who we're targeting, and making sure that the content and the pages on your website align to those people. Because if they don't, you come onto the website, you won't find what you're necessarily looking for, and therefore that event may not be for you, and you won't sign up. Right, I've got a bit of a checklist here. I'm not specifically going to go through this. All of this document will be available for people afterwards. But I think now's the time to jump onto the CES website and to start to think about some of these elements, and then hopefully you can translate to some of your websites and see how things could possibly improve. Okay, so I've come on. I'm thinking of going to a tech event. I think I mentioned this already. The fact that they don't even have tech event, technology event, tech show, world's most powerful tech show, etc., up here right at the top, I think personally is quite a major omission. I think sometimes you just need to be fairly obvious in terms of what the event actually is, because you can't necessarily assume that everybody knows who CES is. And these guys, I think, are assuming that everyone knows who they are. Let's also think about calls to action at this point. Register, apply to exhibit. Whilst you can see them, there's certainly, they probably could, when thinking of calls to action, and we often find that the ones that work the best, the ones that have the most contrast between the main sites. So when people say what color works best, well, it does depend on what the background color is. Basically, you want something that has a lot of contrast to the background. Now, immediately, my eye is actually getting drawn, I don't know if yours is, down to the kind of moving hair at the bottom. So and it's actually drawing me away from registering or applying to exhibit. Now, personally, I'd probably have buttons which were, nice bold colour like this. And also at this stage, I don't really want something that's going to distract me from pressing the register or the apply to exhibit buttons. So I think they could have done that a little bit better. As we scroll down, we've also looked at this main graphic before. Now, unfortunately for me, this is very, very generic. This image could have been applied to 1,001 websites because, it just shows a nice smiling person, but it doesn't tell you in any way that it's a tech show and what to expect at a tech show. So I think they really are. And considering this is the most prime bit of real estate that you have on your websites down here, I think they really are missing a trick, and they could do something with it, portraying, the events, the huge number of exhibitors that are coming, the people that come. I think they're assuming that you know about CES, and I think that if you're looking to improve conversions, you don't want to assume that anyone knows anything about your event. As we work our way down, like I said before, here's the first place where we get to actually find out that it is a tech event. So why? So it's a little bit wordy. I've actually got to sort of spend some time reading this. I think some bullet points and some shorter words may not be a bad thing. If you also notice as well, another best practice is for call to action buttons is to have them the same color. So immediately we have it. So the register now button is different in the top to down here. Again, if something a lot bolder like this red or pink, etc. If we had both of those the same color, we find psychologically, if the register now button or any key calls to action are exactly the same color, then as you browse your way through the website and you're thinking about registering, as soon as you see that color, you then press the button. So that button is not a consistent color. Who will be there? Well, I would like to know who will be there, to be honest. And also, the layout's not great, is it? Companies on the Fortune 500, and then that's merging with this other bit of text. Not great design, to be honest. And also, personally, when I was thinking who's going to be there, I'd like to know who actually is going to be there. So maybe some logos of some highly influential companies or speakers, etc., that are going to be there. So they don't really answer that question, missing a bit of a trick there too. As we come down to, okay, so we have keynote announcement, and the Delta Airlines will do. It doesn't even say who. I'd like to know who that is. I presume this guy is very well known within the industry. I personally don't know who he is, and it doesn't even say his name. The schedule's now live. Okay, great. So we can look at that. But I think when you look through a page like this, it's really trying to look at it. Now, I know it's difficult when it's your own website, especially if you've looked at it for a while and you've been involved in all the changes and updates, but really try and look at it as you were looking at it for the first time. And if you can't do that, is see if you can hand it to someone who hasn't spent a lot of time looking at the site. Is it giving really key information that you're wanting to find out? So they've missed an opportunity here to really present someone who's quite eminent within their industry, and they've missed that trick as well. Okay, so we're now down to exhibit. It's a bit wordy. Not quite sure what there's a Goodyear case study on the right. I think an exhibit button might be better. Oh, that's interesting. Why exhibit the button here? There's very little contrast to the background. Contact sales, apply to exhibit. There's a bit of inconsistency there. I think it's quite nice to have. It works better we find if you have consistency between call to actions buttons. So I'd say keep to apply to exhibit, and also want to keep to the same button color as well. So whatever that button color is, remember the button with the most contrast is your primary call to action. And then if you have a secondary call to action, obviously you still got plenty of contrast, keep it the same color, but maybe not quite as much as your primary call to action. Okay, so we have a case study, Goodyear. Doesn't be nice here to have some words, if I'm honest, as to just introducing that case study. I'm not particularly liking if you see it's quite a few words, it merges in with the heading at the top. Not fantastic user experience, and then we come to a featured talk. Okay. We come through to another page. I was expecting to see that talk there, to be honest. It looks like you should be able to click on here and actually see that talk. It doesn't really talk about, okay, so we've got the title, doesn't say who the person is, doesn't even say who the company is who's given the talk. So I think they've kind of missed a trick there as well. We now have our featured exhibitors. Probably would have expected that to be further up because we've got some big names here that people would want to see. I think it's always good practice in the featured exhibitors to also, from last year's data from your events and visitors and any feedback that you have, to make sure that you have your most, you have the exhibitors here who are going to draw people. And at the bottom we have some guides, so here's some information for attendees, etc. That doesn't look too bad. And then I'm not actually sure what this bit is at the bottom. Get slightly confused by that. I don't think on the home page you should ever be confused about anything, to be honest. Okay. So let's look at some best practice here and let's see how it's kind of worked out. So we want to make sure that CTAs are clear, calls to action, sorry, CTAs is calls to action are clear, clickable and well positioned. So we have some up here. As I mentioned, the contrast isn't as good as it could be. We've got some different colors. I've also recommended that colors are kept consistent. We also have different actual call to action words, apply, contact sales. Again, recommend that these are kept consistent and you have consistent colors as well. What this has mentioned is mobile. So what we haven't done is also had a look at the website on mobile. Now, this is particularly important if a high proportion of your visitors are on mobile. And this is where data also comes into. So, for example, we had a client in which they were reporting particularly poor conversions on mobile. And by looking at Google Analytics, you could see that conversion rates on mobile were literally half of that as they were on desktop. And let's look at CES and see if there's any differences between their mobile site and their desktop. Well, initially we have two call to action buttons here. And if you go onto their mobile version, there are none. We have to click on the menu to try and get their call to action buttons. And what's interesting is that we have some even new colors. Have you noticed the colors here are actually even different to here and further down as well, and these as well. So not liking that. We have new colors. We would definitely want to have these colors the same as, but fundamentally we actually want to have the calls to action straight away, so we can come onto the website and either click register or inquire to exhibit from our homepage here. Again, we can see that, what's happening here? Oh, that's strange. So we have that large bit of graphic coming up, some text here again. I mean, the register now button actually appears fairly well here on mobile. It actually renders better on mobile than we find on desktop, so it actually makes sense, this layout here. There aren't any other, I can't see any other call to action buttons to register, so I'd certainly add more of those in. Yeah, they're definitely missing a trick on registration buttons. I'm not going to go over the same comments that are made on the desktop, but I think the thing that stands out for me here is the lack of call to action buttons, especially when you first come onto the mobile version of the site. A key omission, I'd suggest. We have these here. It shouldn't be underestimated the impact of this. Now, I suggest that a high proportion of CES's traffic is mobile, and by not having those buttons here, I would suggest that they could significantly improve the number of their registrations by having some buttons here. Some from the testing that we've done in the past, and where we have added buttons where they haven't been previously, it has made a major impact in terms of actual registrations. So don't underestimate. Sometimes people think these kind of minor, what appears to be a quick change can have a big difference. And that's why I love conversion rate optimization, because you can do what seems to be fairly simple things and they can have a big difference almost straight away. I mean, how long does it take to add a couple of buttons here? Well, if you have an ASP website, it'll be nice and quick. Okay, so we've spoken about calls to action. There weren't enough on mobile. We're looking at the readability and navigation of mobile devices. I suggest it was actually probably that first section isn't great where that comes up. That's slightly confusing, but it's probably slightly better actually for this website on mobile than it was on desktop. And how important that is for your website will very much depend on the proportions. So, for example, if 80% of your traffic was mobile, then that's fine. If only 10% of your traffic is mobile and 90% is on desktop, I think you need to spend more time on desktop trying to get this look a bit better. Either way, desktop and mobile, they need to be laid out nicely. Mentioned high contrast calls to action. Just let's talk about the contrast and button colors for a second, because we often find this is a little bit of a blocker. We have brand guidelines in terms of colors that will come along with a website design in which it's already been decreed what the colors are going to be. And for example, I think that's probably what's happened here with CES, in which they have particular blue has been as part of the color palette. But what that really misses out is that high contrast button. And depending on the clients we work with, sometimes it's not a problem to change button colors. Sometimes it really can be. And it's just worth pointing out that the resistance to changing button color can genuinely hold back ticket sales or registrations. And I'm not just saying that. We've done specific testing in the past, A/B testing of one color versus another, sometimes buttons with borders around the outside to make them stand out more. And we've seen significant increases in ticket sales, etc., literally by just changing a button color. So one of the arguments that you can potentially, or one of the rationales you can potentially have with management, if you're having pushback on button colors, if it's going against brand guidelines, would be to do A/B testing. And there are services like convert.com where you can literally, for person A, you'd have let's say in this instance, this color. For person B, let's say you'd have this pink color. You'd run that test over a period of time, and then that will tell you actually which button gets more clicks and gets more conversions than the other one. And we generally find that whatever the brand guidelines might be, if one button color actually increases ticket sales in the bottom line, that's all people generally need to know. But A/B testing can be incredibly powerful when it comes to changing button colors. It can also relate to what you actually put in the button as well. So the actual text that is used. So is register the right word? Could you put register now? Sometimes there might be tickets, get tickets, buy tickets. There's lots of research done as to which works better than others, but often it's better because each market is always different. So just because in another market, get tickets works better than buy tickets, it doesn't mean that you shouldn't test it, because maybe in your market, buy tickets works better. And we've spoken briefly about audience-specific content. So again, if you have people interested in specific sectors of your industry, you basically need to make sure that you have relevant content that makes sense to the visitors that come into your website. And a big part of that will also be the menu. How easy is it to find that content? So desktop, there's quite a few options on here looking at CES. As a general rule, people will look from the left to the right. So the most important things you want people to find will be on the left, and then at the top. So attendee overview. I mean, I'm not actually sure what that really means. I think so. Initially, why wouldn't they put YCS on the on the main menu? Keynote speakers, keynotes. That's not too bad. Maybe that's the main reason that people come. CTA member benefits. Okay. So the menu, in essence, you want to make sure that your most important pages and the ones in which people are most interested in are towards the left on the desktop and near the top as well. I'd say the menu is okay. Personally, I'm finding it a little bit busy. I'm not quite sure where to click, but I'd say it generally does the job. If we look at the menu on mobile, actually that looks quite good. Attend, actually that's nice and clear. I'd say the click-through, why attend CES, would have having that text here would have been better. So again, when you think about consistent, a bit similar principle to the advert, just need to make sure that there's consistency between where you're clicking from and where you're clicking to, sorry. In terms of calls to action, again, is that there's plenty of them. And one of the quickest wins that you can always have is to have plenty of calls to action. So we've got the one up here. There was one down here, and then we haven't got any more as far as I can make out. Is there one at the bottom? There isn't even one in the footer. So plenty of calls to action. Obviously, you don't want to overdo it, but remember that people will be scrolling through this site. They'll be scrolling through here, and at any point might think, oh, shall we register? So it's always good to have a button to hand that people can press to register, because that is obviously one of the key things in which you want people to do. If there's one takeaway from this webinar, I think it would be to really focus in on your calls to action. High contrast, make sure there's plenty of them, make sure you have consistency of what you're saying. So if it's register now on the home page, make sure it's register now on every other page, and the same color buttons, and you have plenty of them through the page. So for me, that would be one of the kind of a top tip in terms of how you can improve performance and conversion rate of your website. Social proof. So people want to make sure, people do anything, like if you go to a restaurant and you walk past a window and there's no one sitting in, you don't want to go in there. Whereas obviously the whole restaurateur trick is to have people sitting in the window to draw you in. And it's exactly the same with an events website, in which we want to know who are the exhibitors, who are the speakers, maybe some testimonials, who has been there before. And if we look through here, really missing a trick here in terms of actually we don't get this until the bottom of the page, is it, that we actually see some logos and some of the top people who have exhibited. We've missed a trick in terms of the person's name and who's going to be speaking there. And there's certainly no testimonials here either. Video content, people often have video content, and there are some pros and cons to this. You can certainly, unlike this bit of video here, which kind of tells you nothing, lots of our clients do amazing videos showing maybe a panoramic view across the event and people and speakers, etc., and which really do look fantastic. They can certainly paint a really amazing picture of what you can expect at the event very, very quickly. Sometimes you have to be careful as to how big those videos are, and do they slow the website down too much? And also, are they obscuring any forms of kind of calls to action? So videos can certainly work very well, but also you just have to make sure maybe they're short enough and also not just overwhelming in terms of the homepage and other things that you actually want people to do. One thing which few of our clients have, and I'm always recommending, are frequently asked questions. Those really when you work in an event, I fully understand you know it so well. Sometimes, where is the event? What time is it? Who are the speakers? Some really obvious things that people who have never attended your event before may be asking may not actually be answered on the homepage. So FAQs we find work exceptionally well, both in terms for SEO, driving organic traffic because there's good text on there, but also actually adding genuine value for people too. Just those really basic questions that people may have. Now, people often ask, well, if I have FAQs on the home page, that mean I can't have an FAQ page as well? Fine, have both, because different people will find them in different ways. So maybe on the home page they'll be fairly short and concise, and then maybe you have more details on an FAQ page that you could send people through afterwards. If you have speakers at an event, obviously you want to make sure that keynotes and highly well-known people within your industry are presented on the homepage as part of that social proof. And that was the same with exhibitors as well. So you need to make sure that people will also click through to the speaker section and find speakers that you have. We find with some events, the speakers actually drive some of the most amount of traffic in terms of those pages, because that's who people are really going to the event to see. We seem to have an exhibitor section here, which I haven't formatted very well, and it works exactly the same way for that. You can do much of this by a bit of common sense, by going through the checklist and walking through a web page on which I just have. I also mentioned earlier a bit about Google Analytics. This can also be an exceptionally valuable tool for helping you find out if there are any problems. So, for example, I mentioned about looking how your website is performing on mobile versus on desktop. And the key things you want to measure are conversions and conversion rate. So, for example, if you find that your conversion rate on mobile is only half of that on desktop, it tells you you have a problem. Or if your conversion rate on pay-per-click is twice as much as that is on organic search, it makes you answer the question, why is the organic search conversions are a lot less than on pay-per-click? And there might be valid reasons for that, but it helps you to start to question and make intelligent decisions and to find out how you can improve performance of the site. Just one example of a pay-per-click campaign, and this is going right back to that customer journey, which we found was working really poorly with a particular client, was they were selling tickets to a high-end seminar, £2,000 a ticket, and people were getting sent from the pay-per-click ads straight the way through to the buy tickets now page at £2,000. And obviously, if you're going to invest that kind of money into a seminar, you want to find out a little bit about the seminar beforehand. So setting up and looking at your analytics can find out things such as that. So we've only got 15 minutes left, and the next section of the most important part of your website is the homepage. But secondly, we find major drop-offs occur when it comes to the registration page. Fully understand that the journey involves normally going through to a third-party reg provider, and that journey we found can often cause major problems. So let's do this journey here. Okay, so we click on register. So firstly, we've gone through to these guys who are the registration provider. Just to notice some small things, we have a cookie banner that's popped up at the bottom. Now, this is the correct way of doing things. For those of you who don't know, that for every new domain, you now have to have a cookie banner on each one, and for people to accept cookies on both. Unfortunately, that is now just the way it is, especially if you're operating within the EU. So unfortunately, there's not an awful lot we can do about that, but the best customer journey would be to have the same cookie provider between your website and the reg provider, and to have the same look and feel as you have between one and the other. So I'll just accept all cookies on that. First thing I'm looking for when moving from the main website to the reg provider is a similar look and feel. We'd be amazed how many times the look and feel changes. It looks like on worst examples, I've seen reg providers where it actually looks like you've gone through to a spam site. So I wouldn't say this is like that, but if you go through to this page, so we have got the same logo, which is good. And we've got the date, we've got a bit of text. Now, these call to action buttons, if I'm honest, I'd much prefer to be able to start registering here, to be honest, rather than actually kind of have to choose one of these buttons. There's a bit of text to read, which, if I'm honest, at this point, you really kind of want to start registering. So I'd say that their journey isn't fantastic. So it looks like I'll try and sign in and register. I haven't signed in yet. Looks like I have to create an account. Okay, so what I'm looking at this stage is the form. Is it nice and easy to use? Is it well spaced? And I'd say it is. So let's just start doing this. Just realised I've been talking for a bit. Has anyone got any questions? No questions. Okay, you can watch me fill out a form then. ESP. Okay. So if you note already, I'm having slight difficulties in doing this. And bear in mind, I'm not even registering yet. All I'm doing at this stage is having an account. Now, this may only be relevant to a few of you. I suggest most people, you go straight through to a registration form already. This is a slight pain, to be honest. I'm having to register first of all. So I'm just going to sign up. Oh, fantastic. And I have to select all this because we're all busy people. We don't necessarily have time to be doing all this stuff. So, okay, it's even worse, isn't it? We now have to set up security methods. I'm not even sure what to press. Continue. Okay, so looks like I've now registered, I think. I'm going to say I'm an industry attendee. Okay, I'll continue. Okay, so it's taken me a few steps to get through to actually buying a ticket. I would suggest this is really not a great customer journey. At many points, if I'm honest, I probably would have jumped out. It also, I haven't at any point on the actual website seen what any of the prices are. Because at this stage, I'm now thinking, right, okay, Exhibit Plus versus Conference Pass. I need to know about these. I haven't been given any information about these before. And I said, okay, so let's read more. Okay, there's a bit more there. So this is interesting. So they're providing more information here, and it's not necessarily, it's pretty light, isn't it? I'm now interacting on someone else's website. I'm not interacting on your website, which means that if people are spending time on here, you're not getting the benefit, and from Google's point of view in terms of the amount of time spent on here. I'd much prefer people were spending more time on your website, and this could be laid out much better. I think if you were our client and I was advising on this, all of this information should be on your website, and people should expect to know what they're buying before they come onto the registration form. And then when I select one of these options, you then go and register. So I'm not particularly liking this, to be honest. But I know these are the only options. Maybe they are. Okay. So at this point, they're now expecting you to decide and to buy with not a lot of other information, which is interesting. If I'm going to spend $1,400 on a deluxe conference pass now, again, I'll see us assuming that because they're the biggest, they think they're the biggest and the best, that we'll just do that. And maybe they can get away with it because they're an enormous conference and they can get away with that. But even so, if they did a better job of educating people, finding out what they get for their money, maybe they could even sell tickets for more money. Maybe they could increase their prices. Maybe they could be oversubscribed. I don't know if there are oversubscribed at the moment, but I don't think this experience really wasn't fantastic. I really want to find out at this stage more about the deluxe pass. What do I get? Why do I invest $1,400 into this? And for me, 3 lines of text is really not good enough. They've been really quite lazy here. I think they could have done much, much more. Okay. This is actually the first time I've done this and gone through here, and hopefully for you, you can see actually how powerful it is when you do go through for the first time and almost get that kind of first time experience of how something is, because in reality, that's the experience of many of your visitors to your website and their registration form. So if this whole process is a bit close for you because you know it really well, maybe pass it off to someone else in the office who isn't used to it, someone who works on another event, etc., because that might give you a kind of a cleaner view as to what your user experience actually is. Okay, so let's go through this. We're running out of time, but let's just have a quickly look at this form. Let's just double check to how the form looks on mobile. Should always check how it looks on mobile, especially if your website has more mobile visitors than desktop. I'd actually do this exercise on mobile rather than actually on desktop. And not even in an emulator on your browser like this. And actually with your mobile, it's amazing how it feels so different when you actually use it on your mobile, and that's the true experience that your visitors are having. So not even on a screen like this, I'd suggest you actually get someone, get their mobile, browse to it, how easy it is to register, etc. Okay, let's fill this out. How a form works makes such a difference. You'd be amazed when we've looked at analytics at the different stages of a registration form. How if forms aren't designed well, the drop-off rate can be enormous. It really can be. Do you even know your drop-off rate? You need to make sure you have Google Tag Manager installed, Google Analytics installed, so therefore you can actually know what your drop-off rate is. So long as you actually know that, and then look back on it, you'd be amazed how poor the performance can be on some of these forms. And often I also get that some of the registration form providers can be a real pain to deal with. And so therefore getting these forms designed quite early, so you have time for all this back and forth. The last thing you want actually is in the kind of throes of registration where everything is really busy to also be fighting with the reg company about the form. In reality, I'd recommend that you address this at least a month or two beforehand, get the form sorted, make sure you've done some internal testing that it all works nicely before you then go live with reg. I've worked with many clients and that hasn't been the case. They've launched on forms that really do not work well, and then getting that done, it all becomes a real panic, and it's left too late, to be honest. So this form is not too bad, if I'm honest. Now we've actually got to this point. Looks like we can, okay. Now we've only got a few minutes left, so unfortunately we probably won't get to the end of the form, but I think I've probably given the idea here is that you really need to yourself or members of your team, friends, family, etc., actually just use it and go through the form. And typically with forms, and again, this is a difficult thing. Organizations want to get as much information as possible so you can then market to people afterwards. But again, the more fields that you have, typically then the fewer people actually get to the end of the form because people don't like filling out fields, and there's a general tendency now towards privacy and not giving all of your information on the internet. So there's that balance. What's the minimum amount of information you can get away with on that form? So I've given some tick lists in this document. You'll have this available afterwards. I've also highlighted some of the observations from the CES website that we've been through, and hopefully those observations you can also employ onto your website and look through those too. We've also gone through some best practice checklists for registration forms as well. Like I mentioned, actually having a registration form that looks like your website is one of the first things I'll look at, and it's amazing how many times that isn't the case, and that follows through to call to action buttons that are the same color. You use the same terminology that you've used on your main website. And also starting that process well in advance of Reg going live, so therefore you have time to work with a Reg provider to get your form working well. Do we have any questions? So what I've done there is a fairly brief kind of walkthrough of the CES website. Hopefully doing it on a live website just gave an idea of some of the things in which you can look at. Obviously, it couldn't be fully comprehensive. It's quite a big subject, CRO, but certainly in terms of you looking at call to action buttons, looking at some of the key things that may not be there, such as a bit of social proof, such as actually what your website's about, for example. We've also looked at maybe thinking about your audience and the things that people will be interested in, whether that be certain sections of the website, whether exhibitors, whether they're sponsors, making sure we have the appropriate content that's easy to navigate through to on that. I looked at some best practices, and we've got some tick lists, which again is available afterwards, which you can go through on your website. But every website is different. Every industry is different, and a walkthrough, a bit like what I've done there, is often the best way in which you can kind of highlight some of the issues that you have. Like I said, you can give it to someone in your office, friends or family. If you want someone like me to do that, we're doing a special deal at the moment where I'll do a walkthrough for you, as well as a follow-up report with some actionable findings and recommendations. So I can do that for you if that's of interest, because every site is different. And some of the key pain points might be slightly different. I also mentioned Google Analytics and how it's worth looking in there, just to where that can highlight some of the key problems. Like I said, with a particular client who found that 50% of their mobile website only had 50% of the conversion rate as their desktop site, we wouldn't have found that out if it wasn't for Google Analytics. So it's very important to dive into that and just to make sure that you have some data there and which can highlight where your website might be having some problems. Well, we've flown through, I hope, or it's certainly flown through for me. And this is the end of the webinar. If you have any questions, feel free to either put them through now or email them afterwards. We also have our follow-up webinar. What's our webinar in a week's time, in a month's time? So in a month's time, details to come out of the date, where we'll be going through the whole event life cycle, 365, and all the sorts of things you can be doing in terms of your website and key bits of digital marketing, SEO, conversion rate optimization through that cycle to make sure you can maximize the success of your website. So that will and full details to come out on that. So I hope that was useful, and look forward to catching up with you soon. Thank you.